It's like taking a trash can full of postcards and dumping them on their front porch. That's how consistent over time you've got to be. They've got to get enough of your stuff.
I've been to many houses where I'm sitting there taking a listing and there's some poor real estate agent on the fridge, right? So you got to make sure that you're putting in all of the pieces so that they're paying attention to you.
The other thing that is really powerful that I think a lot of agents miss in your farm area is what we call success announcements. When you list a property in your farm area, that needs to be a big deal. I mean, how many of you are actually farming your tenants now? Like, they're not always going to be your tenants.
Just like your database can be handed over to another agent and sold to them, you could sell your influence at a farm.
Welcome to Signature Buzz, your fast-paced weekly real estate sales meeting.
Welcome to the Signature Buzz. I'm Brandon Roberts along with Chris Bishop. And today we're unpacking a game changer. How to dominate your neighborhood without door knocking like it's 1997.
I just want to point out I was in elementary school in 1997, so I wasn't door knocking.
You weren't selling candy door to door or anything?
Only in trick-or-treating.
Trick-or-treating, you were collecting. You're not just an agent, you're becoming the local economist of choice. If your name isn't the first one your community thinks of when it comes to real estate, this episode is your blueprint. So, Chris, today we're going to talk about becoming the neighborhood economist or farming, right? And so what does a neighborhood economist mean to you?
I mean, I absolutely love that term. I've always thought of it like neighborhood expert or go-to agent. But like that is exactly what the point of it is, that you're the expert on the analytics for that neighborhood, what the houses are going for, what was built in that area, what's happening in the economy, businesses that are coming in, businesses that are leaving. And if you really can be that go-to expert, it means that you have multiple ways in which to engage consumers you know or you don't know. And the point would be to kind of earn their trust, through information and those analytics. And so, you know me, I'm an analytical. I love to look at reports and spreadsheets and all of those great graphs and things like that. And so like this topic has me really excited. I think it's one that a lot of agents have forgotten, that they can go in, pick a neighborhood, find out who's controlling it or who's not, and basically put their dollars to work for them to find new clients, listings, and sales.
See, and I like it because instead of saying like you're the neighborhood expert or you're the neighborhood realtor or stuff like that, it defines it a little bit different. Like, you're not just the realtor, but you're the trusted source of what's happening in the market, in that neighborhood or in that farm area.
Yeah, Keith Lynham always says in his context is, stop selling, stop trying to be the salesy salesperson. And I think that this probably is a way for an agent to feel very comfortable, because I'm not there talking about my new listing. I'm there talking about the value of the neighborhood and what it means to them financially, and what the growth patterns are, and the new construction that's happening, and the revitalization in some areas. And so it's a way for you to kind of not be that salesperson while slipping in that you're a salesperson.
Right. It's a very safe form of prospecting. And the other thing to keep in mind that farming is a long-term activity with long-term results. And so if you're going to go down this path of being successful at farming, you have to be committed to the long haul. It's okay to get immediate results from a long-term activity, because that could happen. You could go out your first mailing, your first contact or whatever, and get a listing. But overall, it's going to take some time to get there.
Yeah, it's like holding an open house. Like, no one said you couldn't sell the house you're holding open, but the odds of it happening are actually pretty minuscule compared to you taking a buyer to a home down the street or another community. And so the same thing's true with the neighborhood. What you're looking for is opportunities for appointments. And so with every listing in the neighborhood, interview 2 to 3 agents. The question is, are you getting a call to be interviewed at all? And the answer is usually no. No one knows me. I'm not a presence in that neighborhood. And funny enough, I remember in the neighborhood I lived in a couple of years back, both next door neighbors that I never talked to went on the market for sale. And I had 2 for sale signs flanking my house. And so it's one of those things where a lot of times, when you're a real estate expert, you want to be the expert, but you just don't want to go and meet people and say that you work this neighborhood. And so that's why I love the idea of using non-traditional activities that still work, right? I mean, those farms that you've had for years and years and years provide opportunities every single year for your business.
Yeah. So when I first got in, my first introduction to farming was actually when I first started real estate. There was a gentleman that had moved over from another brokerage into the brokerage I was at. His name was Joe Story, and Joe Story was a farmer. Like, that's what he did, and he went out there, and he had listings in his area, and he went out and worked in that farm every single day, and I remember him telling me, he even knows which houses are that he can stop in to use the restroom and all that kinda stuff. So, he was very good at and built his whole business around it. Over your years of being in the business, can you think of somebody that has been successful, at farming?
Yeah, me. It's funny when I first got into the business, I did whatever I was told, and so I was told go out and hold open houses, so I held open houses and it worked. And then as I kind of developed over time, and I had past clients, I started noticing that my sales would clump together in areas of town, and so I started utilizing farms in a way to grow my business. And so what I didn't understand initially was the impact that they would have long term. I was just out for the quick deal, right? So I'd send out one postcard every once in a while and I get nothing from it. Sure, I'd get a call that says, yeah, I want to check the value of my house. And then it would just go to crap from there. Not until like a few years later where I learned the consistency of just sending the card. It doesn't matter how many you have. You could have 10 homes. And if you send them those cards on a regular basis, you're going to get market share from those 10 homes. But there was an agent in my office that I remember, Ann Jackson, and she had 3 farms that she had farmed for over 15 years. And
Wow.
she was one of the top agents in our office every single year. And all of her business came from these farms. And now it was kind of like a farm of friends that she had because she'd know these people for so long. I mean, she'd watch their families grow and their houses change and everything. But I just couldn't believe it. Like, she was still putting magnets on stuff, and this is mid 2000s, 2010, right? And it does work.
Yeah, it's funny because there's a lot of ways you can get business, right? And I started with open houses too. I did 2 or 3 to 4 on a weekend, 2 on Saturday, 1 to 2 on Sunday, consistently, and built business off, and it wasn't because, people, were coming in and buying those houses, but the consistency of doing them, you're gonna find people. And I always say in the academy, you gotta have 7 to 11 different ways to get business, and I know you refer to it as pillars in your business. Um, and I said they're always, you can pick whatever you want basically, but there's 2 that are mandatory, and one is your sphere of influence, right?
Yeah.
Building relationships and cultivating relationships, that's number 1. And if you ever wanna build a business where you're gonna get repeat and referral business, your sphere. So that would be the people you know, the people you've done business with, people you love and trust. The number 2 pillar that I say is a non-negotiable if you wanna build a business is by repeat referral and that type of stuff, is your farm, because it's repeat exposure to a specific market that's going to generate those calls coming in. So those are the 2 most powerful, and that every agent I believe should have in there. So open houses could be a negotiable, but farm area I say is a non-negotiable or non-starter if you want to make this a long-term career. But when in doing that, it doesn't necessarily have to be just a geographical farm. I mean, there's a lot of things you could farm. Like, let's say you're part of a cycling club or something else. You can. Why do you
Yeah.
laugh? It's like riding a bike. Um, but whatever it is that group of people or that geographical area that you're going to continue to market to. But let's talk about how do you choose. Um, a farm strategically? Like if you're going to put your time and your money and your effort into something, how do you pick it?
Well, it's interesting because your analogy of your database and you move to your farms, all of those things work the same way, where you're getting a group of people together and you're constantly touching them, whether it be by mail or cards or physical phone calls or knocking on their door. And so, like for instance, as you go through this process, the thing that's better about your SOI is you have a better connection point, so you have better conversion rate. With a farm like this, you usually have zero connection point. They don't know you, they've never met you, they don't even know that you're a real estate agent, they've never seen your sign. And so the hardest part about picking that farm is to find an area that you understand, that you have some standing of the map of what it looks like, whether it's a Facebook group like you pointed out, or it's an actual neighborhood. A lot of agents I noticed start with someplace where they had previous sales or the neighborhood that they live in. There's a debate going on whether you want to be the expert where you live, because when people see you at home mowing your lawn, they're thinking, why aren't you selling my house? That's always kind of been the argument back and forth. But the way I look at it is I want to take as many cheat codes as I can to make it easier for me. And so one of those is to use the MLS to find out the turnover rate for my farm. And so basically, it's a very simple formula. If I look at a 12-month period and there's 100 homes in my farm and 10 of them sold, they have a 10% turnover rate. You can even go back in the MLS several years and you can look and say, okay, the year before it was 11 homes. So that's 11% turnover. Turnover rate's going down. People like the neighborhood. They don't want to move. And then you can use different service providers, different support members, such as your title company. Your title company can provide great analytics for you on the neighborhood and what's happening in it. They can provide, historical data that you can look at for that. And so what I want to know is I want to know the turnover rate is somewhat decent. And I think 10% is a decent turnover rate. And then I want to know who I'm competing against, meaning, if Betty Joe has sold 5 of the 10 that's there, Betty Joe has a 50% market share. Do I want to start competing my dollars against Betty Joe, who's been there for 5 years marketing? Or do I want to go to the subdivision right next door where no one has a market share? And so I think a lot of times agents will start these mailing campaigns in areas that they have zero analytics for, and they have no understanding of who's controlling it. And this is stuff that's readily available right now in the MLS. I mean, you can see every listing agent and you can see the agent that sold the property. So you can actually figure these things out. Believe it or not, new home communities take the longest to get going, but they have zero relationships in most cases because 80% of those homes were sold by a new home sales rep, not by an actual realtor that's marketing them after the fact. And so when you look at these things, you kind of want to make sure that your strategic marketing dollars are being as effective as they can. And that's going to determine the difference whether you start to get opportunities for appointments right now or you're going to wait 18 months for it to start happening. When you picked your farm, what made you pick it? I mean, I know you had several and you lived in the area. Was it because you worked the area?
Yeah. Well, first of all, like you said, you have to determine if you're comfortable marketing in the area you live or not, right? Sometimes that's easier because you're in that area and you're going to know your neighbors, hopefully, that kind of stuff. But when I was first looking, and I didn't have a lot of direction on selecting one, again, I just heard Joe's story. He had one, and he had a farm, and he was successful. So I found this area in Murray, Utah, and it was just beautiful. It was a nice neighborhood to walk in and stuff. And so I started working that area for quite some time, but I never ever saw any homes go up for sale. And so I started, and everyone just wanted to stay there, right? It was that good of a neighborhood, and it was an older neighborhood, and so these people had been there for a long time, and it didn't seem like they were going to move. And so when my broker actually sat me down and said, "Hey, let's look at the area," and we started pulling stats, we found that there was very low percentage of sales. And so I knew that this probably isn't going to be my farm area, or I'm going to have to wait these people out until they pass to the next life, and then it starts to turn over. So, and I didn't have that kind of time. So, um, the next question really was, okay, let's find a place where there's high turnover, right? And so I found this area in kind of Salt Lake, Liberty Park area. If anyone's from Salt Lake and knows that area, um, near the Liberty Park. And the average sales price back when I was selling was about 95,000 to 115, right? This was a starter home neighborhood, first time buyers and stuff, but there was over 100 plus sales that happened there every year. And
Wow.
so that was a real easy place for me to start marketing because if I could just get 10% of that, that's 10 deals. And that 10 deals translates, okay, that's 10 listings. And if I sold 8 of those, how many of those people are probably going to be buying something else? Right. So that turned into other deals that I could be selling somewhere else. And then how many calls would I get off those signs because people are driving those neighborhoods? So that was really kind of a springboard for my business by doing that, but that was in the starter home neighborhood. What I learned years later is if you want to increase your sales price, then you have a prime opportunity of where you spend your marketing dollars. So if you select an area with a higher sales price, you can dictate the type of um, income that you're going to make based on the listing price, but also the people driving that neighborhood are probably looking in that sales price too. And so what I found though after that is that a lot of these people were moving to another certain area of town, which was either Highland Park or Canyon Rim, which was about double the price, right? If the home was remodeled, and it was, 75 or $80,000 more if it wasn't. And so I started marketing that area too. And so in the Canyon Rim area, I'd start marketing. And when I take a listing, where did I market that listing? I would
the other
take it into my other farm. And so I was moving a lot of people from one farm to the next. And so you could be very strategic on picking your farm area, but I agree with you on looking at who's selling it, right? If one company is selling all the listings in that area, then dive in deeper. If it's one agent, then you know you're in what? Their farm area.
yeah.
And so then you have to make a decision, do you want to compete against them or not? So um, the fun part is picking that. Big question for you is how many homes should you market to?
Yeah, I mean, like I literally, I'm not a kindergartner, but I dumb it down to the simplest format that if I was going to be a farmer, like I got my hat on and that wheat sticking out of my mouth kind of thing. I'm not going to farm 10,000 acres. I have no idea what I'm doing. And so I would pick a very minimal amount of homes, like 100 homes is a perfect amount, in my opinion. Just like 100 acres or 10 acres would be what I'd start with. The one thing I want to do initially is I want to work out all the kinks, right? Because this is going to be a long term commitment to my business. And I've actually seen real estate agents go financially bankrupt farming homes because they picked too big of an area to market to. Like if I was going to start tomorrow and I didn't have $1 million budget, I can't go out and farm all of Aliante, right? I mean, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of homes. And so that financial commitment would be overpowering. And so a lot of agents, don't commit to the long term, meaning that you need to be able to put that money away right now to farm that neighborhood for the next 2 years without any question of financial relevance to whether your bills get paid or things like that. And so 100 homes is pretty agreeable. The other thing is a lot of agents enter the marketing plan of a farm with absolutely no plan. Like they don't know what they're going to send. They don't know what the outcome is going to be. They have no call to action. There's got to be strategy behind it for it to actually turn over. And the way that I found that out is I spent a lot of money that did nothing. I learned a lot of lessons that helped nothing. And now I think that's the point of, testing this out in a marketplace. By the way, no one's keeping a record of it, right? Like no one really is taking a big notice that you entered into a farm unless you get the Goodyear blimp and you make that thing happen. But um, to your example, if Betty Joe does have a 50% market share, and I am going to go into that marketplace because I want to control that area. I don't care about what Betty Joe says. Then at least I should find out all about Betty Joe. I should know how she does her business. I should know what her stats are. I need to know strategically how to compete against her and how to highlight the things that I do better than she does, right? I never ever would talk bad about an agent or their business, but it doesn't mean I can't have strategy to how I'm going to combat her for that business. And so I think that's another piece that there's probably always some small, minute market share for some agent somewhere. What's my strategy going to be to overtake them? And either hire them to work with me or get strategic on the way that I present those marketing pieces and the things that they don't do. So, I mean, that's just my 2 cents on it. I remember my first farm, it's called Sycamore Estates, and it only had 68 homes in it. And it was a high price point. Like when I entered the business, the average price was like $310,000, and the average price in this neighborhood was 650. And so I kind of figured that if I get one, I've got two deals where everyone else is working, on one. And so I thought, yeah, I can commit to 68 homes. That's not a hard thing to do. And so I started sending a mailer, but I didn't do it correctly because I sent one a quarter, thinking that everyone was excited when I sent it to open the mailbox and find my ugly photo. Right? It didn't work that way. So I had to get a better marketing plan as I went through that process.
Yeah, and see, I think the number of homes that you do is going to depend on what your marketing plan is going to be. Because if you're going to just stay behind or just stand behind mailing consistently, like keep this in perspective, it's like taking a trash can full of postcards and dumping them on their front porch. That's how consistent over time you've got to be. They've got to get enough of your stuff, right? And in that regard, don't take on more homes than you can consistently mail to. So you're right. But let's say you are going to make some calls in the area and you're going to do some door knocking. You're going to need a few more than 100, or you're going to be knocking their door every, 2 weeks. And so for me, I always say you try to build up to 1,500 or 2,000 homes. And I know that's significant from where you're at, but it's not like day one, right?
Yeah.
You start to build it and you start to expand that area. And that could be multiple areas like I did, kind of a starter and a move up area. And so in that regard, I think pick a number that you're going to be consistent about and be able to go to on a regular basis, obviously. So let's talk about what would you send them or what would you do? How would you get yourself in front of them to become this neighborhood economist?
Well, first off, stop worrying about what your card looks like and worry about getting it to them, right? And I think about the trash can idea the same way you said it is how many times do they need to throw my card away before they realize I'm a real estate agent selling houses in the neighborhood? And so I can kind of, I get cards in the mail, you get cards in the mail. You look at it on its way to the trash can. And so after a while, I can tell you that Debbie with State Farm has sent me like 50 mailing cards since I lived at my residence because I like throwing Debbie away all the time, right? That's the same idea. And the only thing that the card gimmicks do is they stop the transition from me taking it to the trash can to reading it. That's when we started to see things like, game times, like, oh, here's the Vegas Golden Knight game schedule. I'm going to stick that on the fridge so I know where it's at. Or that recipe card. Oh my God, they've been waiting for that peach cobbler recipe from Betty Joe to come in. It's things like that that kind of delay the process where they might hold on to it, meaning that you might be sitting on their fridge. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to get the opportunity. The consistency of long term marketing in that way is there. I've been to many houses where I'm sitting there taking a listing and there's some poor real estate agent on the fridge, right? So you got to make sure that you're putting in all of the pieces so that they're paying attention to you. The funniest part for me, Brandon, is that when I started marketing Sycamore Estates, I had one sale in the neighborhood, and it was a very poor turnover rate in that neighborhood. It was probably like four homes out of that 60 every year would sell. Well, so far I got a 25% market share. And so, of course, I'm sending out these cards thinking that's all I got to do. And it wasn't until I started going to classes on farming and starting to hear from people who were very successful at it to find out the minimum amount of cards I need to send is at least 2 a month to really get a traction going. And I should hope to do 3 or 4 a month to get more people to pay attention. The same idea as the trash can. And then I started asking around saying, well, what's the value of these cards? What should I send them? Isn't there a perfect thing that'll get people to engage? And there's actually research out there that people look at different things on a card to convince someone to open it and to read it. Like one of the classes I went to said that if you send a card with a snowflake on it, I think this was from Tom Ferry. If you send a card with a snowflake, like literally snow, it's 30% more likely to be looked at than a card without it. So I listed a cabin up in Mount Charleston, and every time I sent out a mailing card on that thing, it had a snowflake on it, right? The engagement was unbelievable on these cards. If you really want someone to open something you send, and this is when it blew my mind, is get like the Hallmark colorful envelopes and put a stamp on the back, and people will think it's an invitation, right? It's an invitation to meet your realtor. And so like if you do these things and send them out and actually, document the analytics, you can get strategically better at your farm and the things that people are looking at opening. And so these things are all financial impacts I can make. The other side of it is sweat equity, right? I can get up out of my office and I can go out to my farm and take an active role in the community. And people will be getting these cards in the mail and they'll be seeing my ugly face out in the community and they'll say, wow, that's Chris the realtor. I think the best thing I ever did was I started to market to local businesses around my farm. And so I use them as an engagement point because when they go to the local restaurant or the local grocery store or the dry cleaners is a great example. If they saw my card there at the dry cleaners and they got my card in the mail and they saw me holding an open house and I door knocked the community, it's impossible not to know that Chris is a realtor in the community. Right.
Oh, that's good. So you farmed Sycamore Estates, huh?
I just thought it was a great idea. Right. And so
Eh,
here's what's really funny. I'm holding an open house. I just started my cards. Guy comes into the open house. That's a different video, but comes in. I end up selling the house across the street to him cash. So now I have 2 sales in the neighborhood, right? And so I'm like, this is working really well, but I haven't gotten anything from the mailings. And so I'm about 3 months in. I've spent a total of, I think at that time, probably about $600 because I keep sending these things out 2 or 3 times a month that I have. And I kid you not, I get a call from a lady who says, are you the supposed expert? And I said, yes, ma'am, I am. And she goes, well, let me tell you, my husband and I are real estate agents and we own a home in here and we live here and you're never going to get any business from that. And I'm like, okay, well, thanks for letting me know. I appreciate that. And I said, who are you and your husband? And she gave me the name. I'm not going to say it here. And it's a real estate agent I know really well. And so he gets on the phone and I said, what do you think of my cards? And he goes, oh, well, they're nice. You got a great card you're sending out. I said, okay, cool. So I said, well, I appreciate you letting me know that you guys are marketing the neighborhood too. By the way, how many sales have you done in here? Oh, we haven't done any. I said, oh, okay, well, I've had 2. So I just want to put that out there. I'm going to continue to market. I hope there's no bad blood between us. And he said, no, no, I understand, but we just want to let you know. The very next week, a guy calls me up. He must have been 100 years old. And he goes, is this the market expert? And I'm thinking, oh God, it's their grandfather, right? And the guy goes, he goes, I want you to come over and list my house. I need an aggressive agent like you. And I'm thinking I'm getting a prank phone call. And sure enough, I invite the guy over to my office. He comes over, sits down in front of me. He'd had his home listed for a year with another agent. It didn't sell. And I signed him to a listing agreement off of a postcard at my commission rate. And I sold his house a month later. And so, like, it really does work. People really do pay attention. But the thing that left me kind of stunned was he said, I want an aggressive agent like you. He had never met me. I'd never actually met him door knocking, but he thought I was aggressive solely for the fact that I was sending out cards to the neighborhood. I mean, that's what people want to see.
Yeah. That's a great success story. So Sycamore Estates, one of my first sales in my career was Sycamore Tree Cove.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, no, it was actually an open house. In fact, it's the only home I ever sold in my career that I sold it to the guy that walked in to the open house. Now, he didn't buy it that day. I still had to go out and show him 30 houses, but he came back and bought that one. So anyway, that was a good one. He ended up being a good client, Jim. But the other thing you mentioned is so if you're going to do open houses, and this is what I like if you're going to work expireds and you're going to work for sale by owners and you're going to work the notice of defaults and you're going to hold open houses and you're going to do all these things, the best place to do them is in your farm area, right? You don't have to chase for sale by owners all across the valley. You don't have to chase expireds all across the valley, and you don't have to do open houses all across the valley. If you're doing them in your farm area, that adds to the repeat exposure to the specific market that you're working in. Your job is to be the neighborhood economist. So if somebody is selling their home on their own, you should be talking to them, right? And it's a whole different approach than just cold calling off a for sale by owner, because you're the neighborhood economist, neighborhood expert. The other thing that is really powerful that I think a lot of agents miss in your farm area is what we call success announcements. When you list a property in your farm area, that needs to be a big deal. That means just listed postcards need to go out to the entire farm area. When you sell it, the just sold postcards need to go out there. Anytime there's success there, because everything that you're doing to market that property, when they come to listing their own, they're going to be looking for someone aggressive like you. They're going to want those things. So if you knock the doors, if you put flyers on their doors, if you've just listed just sold postcards, you do all that stuff, you call them and let them know the home's on the market, when they're ready to sell, who are they going to think of? Like, they're going to call you because you're the one working there. Reminds me, I took a listing way out west. It was in a town called Magna in Utah. And
I
one of
knew.
what's that?
You
Known
said
for the
out west, and I knew.
Yeah, known for their great water. I mean, they had the worst water in the valley, but nonetheless, I drove out there, and one of the things I did on a regular basis was open houses. And this leads down to repeat exposure to a specific market. That's why I go there. I know it's an open house story, but so one of the things I said is I'm going to hold an open house here every weekend until this thing sells.
Yeah.
Because had been holding other people's, but this was going to be a listing of mine. And I was going to do it. And so what happened is, by me going out there every weekend, my phone would start to ring. I didn't have a lot of people come through the open house, but I'd get a phone call, and it was, four doors down. And so I went out and listed the property, and then I asked them, why did you list with me? And they said, because you're the only one that works this area. So the perception of the open house signs made it seem like I was the only one out there working. Well, the beautiful thing now is I could have the same signs out and I could do 2 open houses on a weekend. And that started to compound. And so, that repeat exposure is a huge thing. So open houses, just listed, just sold, anything that is a success announcement, and anything that comes up potentially that could be a life event that causes somebody to buy or sell. Those are the things you need to be in front of people with.
You made me think of so many pieces of that when you are the neighborhood economist and you're the expert that wants to get at least an opportunity to list their house, then your branding in that marketplace is so important. So I've held open rental properties, like for rent homes. I've held open because the whole thing was for me to have an impact in the neighborhood, and there was no properties for sale. So I had to go to whatever was available. Just like you said, I've had for sale by owners that don't want to list with a real estate agent, but they do want their home to be exposed to the marketplace. I've held those homes open. And it's always kind of been my strategy that I didn't let other agents hold my listings open outside of my company and my farm. But I would always call and ask the other companies that had them so I could put my open house sign out in front of that listing and say, it don't matter who lists it. Chris is the one that sells houses in this neighborhood. And so that was always kind of a thing that I did. But you brought up another really key point that if I do take a listing in my farm, I need to scream it from the rooftops. And so one of the things I did because of a class I went to is I started a mini farm impact for every listing I would take, meaning that I would have, my 2 or 3 cards a month that were going out to my farm. That was a given, that was already set. It didn't matter, it was going to happen. But when I take that listing over a 30 to 40-day period, I would send out 10 cards about that property. I would send out 2 or 3 just listed cards to the neighborhood that I'm farming saying, hey, I just listed this home. And I would do it over like probably about a 10-day period so that they would see it got listed. And then if I did a price reduction, I do 1 or 2 price reduction cards. And then when that property would go under contract, again, I'd send 1 or 2 under contract cards saying, I just got this home under contract. It's going to make a financial impact to the neighborhood. Be excited. And then when it would sell, I'd send 3 or 4 more cards because the impact of those cards were saturating like that trash can. It was getting into their mailbox where they're seeing, oh my God, Chris is making this happen. And then after the property would sell, I would usually door knock the neighborhood saying that, hey, listen, I want to let you know this sale made a $20,000 or $30,000 impact to your bottom line and the value of your home. Have you thought about selling? And I would always get people that have engagement from it. I would always get them to say it. But I love your part about going to other farms around it where there's move up and move down. I never thought of that. I never thought about that part. I always try to get farms where it had like an upsize and the downsize. But it's a great point. People are usually moving into the same locations as they transition through.
Yeah, the important thing is be consistent and be in front of them. Now, there's something that's come about since long after I was starting out and building my farms and stuff in Salt Lake, and it's social media, right?
Yeah.
And so we've got these and even neighborhoods. There's an app called Neighborhoods or whatever, and a lot of agents market into these kinds of stuff. But um, let's talk about that. You start a farm area, right? And you want to start a social media group, right? So let's just say um, Sycamore Estates. So you've got friends of Sycamore Estates or residents of Sycamore Estates. How do you go about starting that group or getting people in the neighborhood to join that group? Because that's a great platform to be able to put your message out or to be in front of these people.
Well, you remember when the app next door came out, the big thing that people got on there for was to find out things that are happening in their neighborhood, such as events or safety issues. And now the reason why people have turned it off is that because everyone who owns a business in there is just compiling, their business contacts in there and things like that. But I love the idea of using Facebook to create a private Facebook group, and you make it invite only. You can mail out cards to the neighborhood saying, "I've created an exclusive group just for the residents of Sycamore Estates to keep each other updated on things that are happening for safety and stats." Because if I'm the neighborhood economist, this is a great way for me to get the stats out for everyone. And it could kind of be like a mini neighborhood watch type segment where they can find out things that are happening. Another strategic way going about it is a lot of times there's a community manager if it's in an HOA, and that community manager is already stressed out with everything that they're dealing with all of the violations and notices they're sending out. And so I've actually had success with going to them and saying, I'd love to write the community newsletter or create that community site so that you can keep everyone updated on things happening in the community. The repavement of the streets and the little HOA party that you're going to have, or the election of the HOA board of directors, right? I mean, you can get as strategic as you want to bring people on your side. But one of the things I know an agent's doing right now is that she's sending out postcards with a little QR code. On every postcard, it says, join your community Facebook page. And all they have to do is hover over that with their phone and click on it. And they now have become a contact on her Facebook group that she manages and controls. And so after a certain point, you could literally slow back on the cards and speed up on the posts of things that you're promoting. And I'm not saying go on there and post your new listing video of a listing that doesn't matter to them. I'm just saying provide value of things that matter in that community, hence the local businesses or the new restaurant that just opened down the street. I don't know a business in town that wouldn't give you a discount coupon that you could promote on a Facebook page if they knew they could be part of it. But things like that really work, and it's a way to convert your dollars to sweat equity. It's going to take your time instead of your money, and I think that's the whole thing. If you really become the expert, why not work for that conversion process?
Yeah, it's we've had a couple agents over the years here at Signature. They've done really, really good with the Facebook groups. And one of them, well, two of them, they worked together. They went out and actually purchased one. And so they found the area that they wanted to work in or farm in, and they contacted the admin of the site and actually negotiated a purchase price. And the guy sold them the group, which already had the followers. And
Yeah.
so they were able to step in and start to market in that. But one of the things they didn't do was a huge amount of real estate posts. They did enough that people knew they were in real estate, but that's not what the group was. The group was about sharing information, a place for the community to comment and that kind of stuff. And then the nice thing is that when they allowed the people that once they listed their homes for those people to share their listing,
Yeah.
and because they were in the community. But I use, like, I'm a member. I have a cabin in an area of Utah, and I'm a member of the local face groups book there. And I utilize it. Like, I needed a plumber one time, and I went in and did a search for a plumber, and I can read what people are saying about it, and it allowed me to connect with a few different people. So I would use those sites, um, and that kind of stuff. So there's a value to the neighborhood to be part of it, and if there's a value, they'll keep returning to it, and that's an opportunity for you to also see what's going on in the neighborhood, for you to be able to reach out. The other thing is it doesn't just have to be um, a neighborhood site. Like Andrew Lunsford, Sasquatch, has gone out and he created a Las Vegas Golden Knights page,
Yeah.
fan group, right? And there's multiples like that, and they're big, and his is pretty big too. And he did a really good job of marketing that when the Knights first came here. So much so that when we go to a game, people would recognize him, right? Call him Sasquatch. They would bring him like Sasquatch socks and stuff. I mean, it was almost a little creepy. But he did a lot of different things. And I remember he gave away some tickets one time on there. We were playing the Sharks, and he put on there the first three people to come into my office with a bag of gummy sharks win these tickets, right? And people showed up. And so he was making an impact, and that was a way he was drawing them into what he was doing, without really saying, "Hey, I'm in real estate." And he listed a lot of property from it. And so it doesn't just have to be a neighborhood group. You can farm a Facebook group. I think that's a huge way to go about it. But the key here is to kind of speak their language, and to understand what the purpose of that group or what the purpose of that farm is, and then make yourself attractive.
Yeah, you got to make it about them. I think that people don't care about who you are as a salesperson. They don't care about your awards and your history. They care what's in it for them, right? And so, like, my point of going door to door and saying that this home sold and here's the financial impact, because that was about them. You made more money on your house. What do you want to do now? I think the story about Andrew is so specific that if you make the whatever their passion is, that you're bringing the message of what's happening with that passion, they're going to research and find out who you are. They're going to see that you're a real estate agent because you wear that emblem on your shirt every time you go out, and you have those signs in the neighborhood, and they take notice of it, and you're sending those cards. It's kind of like subliminal messaging, right? They associate you with this passion, and oh, yeah, you're a realtor on the side. And so that's why things like newsletters, community stats, I'm not going to say anything about me. I'm just going to say, here's what happened in the community, but I'm going to brand it to me so that they know where it came from. And I think that a couple of things not to do. Number one, do not eliminate tenants in a neighborhood just because they're tenants. These are people that no one cares about in many cases, that you know when their lease is up because they record it in the MLS in pretty much every occurrence. So make sure that you're in front of them, because if they've been renting that house for a year or two, they may want to buy it, and the owner may be tired of having a tenant, and they don't want to be a landlord anymore. They may want to sell it. And so you want to make sure that you're in front of them, that you're making friends with them as well, because it's not about the house, it's about the people. Like, I want everyone in that tenant's database, I want them to refer to me. The second thing to make sure of is don't eliminate out of state owners. Like all the time, I hear people say, well, I took out all the out of state people because they're not here. Well, these are the people that are disengaged from the property that may have a desire to get rid of it, and they need the info the most. Like they live in Wisconsin where they're snowed in, and they want to know what's happening in the neighborhood where they've invested $600,000 of their hard earned money. And you're the person keeping them up to date. It's a likely record. It's a likely occurrence that you're going to be the person they call to list it. Um, the other thing is make sure that when you start the farm, get as many resources as you can, like a walking list. My title company provides a walking list so that if I go door knocking, I have a list of whoever's in the house or what's recorded there and analytics about them. Like I can get a lot of details there on who they are. You can use things like whitepages.com and you can actually go on and find the phone number for the residents and say, hey, I'm Chris Bishop, the local neighborhood expert, and I'm here because I'm starting a community page. And I had your number is 702-555-1638. Is that number still good for you? And they're going to be like, well, yeah, how'd you get my number? Oh, I just have a resource page. I'm reading about the community for the benefit of all the neighbors so that you can connect with each other on our Facebook site. These are things that you can do to create their engagement. I've hosted a neighborhood barbecue. The HOA doesn't have any money for it. They want to get everyone together. So sure, I'll spend 300 or 400 bucks and flip some hot dogs and burgers and stuff to be able to meet these people with my name on my shirt and everything else to say, yeah, I care about the community. I care about them. All of the neighborhood events, 4th of July, trick or treat. Wouldn't it be great to host refreshment stands or things like that in the community park as the neighborhood extra or a bounce house, on the 4th of July so the kids can come over and play and hang out, that kind of thing. I mean, just so that you're creating more and more value in that community to show that you are the person to go to for help.
Yeah, I like that you brought up tenants. It brought up another farm area idea for property managers. I mean, how many of you are actually farming your tenants now? Like, they're not always going to be your tenants, and I mean, you got to walk a fine line. You don't want to talk them out of moving. When you got a good tenant that's going to be in a property necessarily, but a lot of them do buy homes after they move. A lot of people come to Vegas and other areas. Um, Initially rent to get to know the area a little bit and then they buy. So that's a great place there too. Another great thing you could do in your community, and we did this in Salt Lake years back, was neighborhood food drives.
Mm.
And so in your farm area, what I liked about it gave you multiple contacts because first of all, you can go around and knock every one of the doors, let them know you're going to be doing a food drive, and then you can knock every single one of the doors as you're picking up the food on that whatever day you're doing it, and then you can do announcements and stuff like that on the amount of food that you guys raised and all that kind of stuff. So there's multiple things, and the neat thing about this one was I had multiple agents doing it, and they got together and they decided to do what they called feed the need. And this was years ago. And so they compiled it and they, instead of just saying, hey, we're doing it at a farm, all these farm areas, these people working and we're doing them together. And it got news attention. In fact, the Jazz Bear was there and stuff like that. And then the drop off when we delivered all the food was actually to a local mall, and the news was there, and there was just piles of food that the agents had collected in this area. But it was a huge opportunity to be out there in the community and to be seen and be doing something good for the community. So to me, I always like that. And you mentioned the holidays, you can always buy stuff like dropping off flags or putting flags on their front lawn for, 4th of July and different things like that. One thing that I also liked, the Canyon Rim area where I farmed, um, was next to my office, which really made it easy, in selecting my farm area, and what I did is I went around and knocked doors and handed out postcards that said, "Hey, on this day, you can come by," and this was around Halloween, "You could come by my office and pick up a free pumpkin." And I bought a big truckload of pumpkins, and people came down with their cards and got to get free pumpkins for Halloween. And so I've heard like Vonda, I believe she's done like gingerbread decorating contests around Christmas
Yeah.
for her database. So there's a lot of great ideas to engage people, and the thing is to have a plan, right? You can't just wing this like we do everything else. You actually have to create some sort of content calendar or plan to how you're going to market to them. How did you do that?
So I did it wrong for a long time and spent a lot of money until I did it right. And so it's your point of planning out the entire year. There's two ways to get there. I can send these cards and I can spend my hard-earned money and I can send two or three of them and it's going to cost me 400 or 500 bucks and I can sit and wait until it happens. Or I can speed up the timeline by having those events or providing air support or ground support by me going into the community. Those things will speed up the attraction rate of people taking notice of you in that community. And so when I found out that I could do that by having that air support, I started creating all these events. There is one, though, that I'm going to tell you that worked in a way that made me feel good as a person. And that was the community newsletter. Not a community newsletter about how Chris is a great realtor, but a community newsletter about the people that live in this community. For instance, Betty Joe, who is a nail technician who has a small business where she's trying to get clients in the neighborhood. She works out of her house. If I highlighted that in the community newsletter that, hey, I want to tell the story of Betty Joe, and here's an example of the nail she's done, and here's someone who gave her a great review, it's amazing how I was able to help someone grow their income, promote their small business, all from a good place. Do you think I got referrals from that? I absolutely did. I made a friend for life. I made someone who was always going to be a proponent of me being the go to neighborhood realtor. And I didn't say anything about me. The other thing you can do, and this works really well, is when there's a story in the neighborhood to say, like, hey, I want you all to meet John and Mary, who just moved into the community. He's a cop and she's a firefighter, and they're here raising their two kids that go to the school down the street. We're going to meet them at the next community event that we're hosting next month on the 5th, right? These are ways to sell this engagement where you're the go to source for all these things happening. And you don't have to say anything about sales, anything like that. The other thing I always want to make sure of too, every listing that's listed and every sale that's sold, I want to be the one to share the message. So in that community newsletter, hey, congratulations to John with Realty One on his new sale that just happened down the street at 123 Main Street. We're looking forward to meeting the new neighbors. Like, I can give credit where credit's due for the people that did do the sales because it was their sale, but all the messages come from me. And so I think that's the whole point about controlling that neighborhood. One of the last things I'll mention on this, don't get caught with your pants down in the neighborhood. And what I mean is make sure that you actually understand the stats of what's going on in that neighborhood. So when someone calls you up and said, well, I've been getting your postcards for the last year. Can you tell me about the neighborhood? You don't want to be left speechless, like, well, let me go back to my office and I'll pull the stats. Oh, I thought you were the expert and you would know, right? So I started carrying around a little card in my wallet for every one of my farms that highlighted all of its stats, and I would update them on a quarterly basis. Here's the median price. Here's how many homes are in the community. Here's what this floor plan is. You have the Gallo floor plan. It was built in 1998. It has this many square footage. I would have all of that on a little index card or wallet card, so that no matter what happens, your door knocking, you can pull it right out and get them all that info.
So, and that's good advice. A lot of our neighborhoods here anymore are tract homes, similar houses, right? And so you should know the floor plans. You should know the prices. Like when I was working the Canyon Rim area, I knew that a house for sale went for about $175,000. That was if it wasn't remodeled. If it was remodeled, it went up to 250, right? And so by knowing that, just a couple questions, I could give them approximate of where it was, right? Yes, I'm going to get more details on what they put into the house and all that kind of stuff to get a little bit more formal. But it's almost like the early days of his estimate, where you're kind of you have to have an idea what that is. So knowing your stats are important. You know your days on market, know all that kind of stuff. The other thing is, I don't want to discourage anyone from farming, because we've talked about a lot of things that do cost money, like the mailings and different things like that. But there's a lot of things you can do that don't cost money. And a lot of that is just being seen in the neighborhood. Like, yes, you can door knock like it's 1997, but do it in a different way, like for food drives, different things like that, or let them know about your listings, that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of things you can do, like attending the neighborhood garage sales,
Yep.
like going through the neighborhood, and if somebody's having a garage sale, and these are great too, because why do people usually have a garage sale?
Because they're planning on moving.
They could be planning on moving, right? And those are the people you should be talking to.
By the
Um,
way, on that, Brennan, that is a great opportunity for you to be the mouthpiece marketing that garage sale. What if it was your open house signs out there and it didn't say open house, but you put community garage sale or 123 Main Street garage sale, and you staple it, or you know taped it to your open house sign. It just happened to have your name there next to it, but you're helping them promote that thing because you care about the people that live in the community. It's another great way to get your name out there that it's more than just a sale for you.
Or if you're gonna do this and you're gonna be consistent about it, why not just order some signs that say garage sale, signs provided compliments of your name and signature real estate, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? And then you have them and you let everyone in the neighborhood know that anytime they're having a garage sale, rather than stapling things to the phone poles and stuff like that, that they
They can
can,
call you.
yeah,
You
they
know,
can call you for the signs.
I remember
Um,
a gal that had a party uh, trailer where it had party supplies. She had like a margarita machine, she had tables and chairs, and she promoted that in her farm that anyone in the farm, you have access to use this. I've seen a guy do a moving truck, which I don't recommend because it didn't look the same after a few years, had some dents in it. But one of the other things that I was thinking of was CMAs. CMAs don't cost any money for you to come in and create one. And I would annually go into my farm and I would knock on the door and say, "Hey, Chris Bishop, I'm just here with your annual CMA on the value of your home. Please let me know if you need anything." It's a very calm, very easy contact. And I would always brand the CMA and the envelope it was in. And people are like, "What's he doing in the neighborhood? What are all those envelopes?" But I'd go door to door and I knew who was in the house and I'd provide them that CMA. Another great point.
yeah, and another thing is, many people live in homeowners associations. You gotta ask yourself, when was the last time you went to the HOA meeting? You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Because I know they're exciting, but the fact of the matter is it's about being seen in the neighborhood, right? And knowing the people in your neighborhood or the neighborhood you're farming. The other one that's been big in my area that actually an agent in town has done a really good job with is, there's a lot of times we get notices for development. And I live in an area where they're really fighting development. There are a lot of ranchers and stuff like that that didn't really don't really want commercial and stuff intruding on that and this high density housing and stuff. And we need that stuff because of limited land. That's a different discussion. But the fact is, they send out these notices about these proposed projects. I mean, I would go to those meetings because those are the people. That's where you're going to meet the people that really care about the area. Those are the people that you're going to be able to really tap into. And this agent's been very successful at taking that and then also heading up the neighborhood watch, getting with Metro and stuff like that to set that up. And he's like the neighborhood watch command center now. Like, so he's constantly sending out emails and stuff about what's going on in the neighborhood. Like I got notified the other day there was a fire down one of the streets, and he gave an update of when it was out and all kinds of stuff like that. And they're all coming from his email, and his email is all branded to what?
Him and his business. Yeah.
Yeah, and so he's well known in the area for that, right? And I don't farm that area. In fact, I try not to know my neighbors too much. I try to be incognito. No, but seriously, he's done a good job with that. Um, I I'm impressed with that kind of stuff and thinking outside the box, the things that don't necessarily cost you money.
When you said HOA meeting, it really kind of jarred my mindset on that. That the connection with those local businesses, that restaurant that just opened, that's a great place for you to engage to host that meeting, or better yet, your real estate office. We've had a ton of agents come in and host events in the office that they're having, or be the coordinator for that. Let's talk about long term for just a second, because I think this is the thing where people fall off. The reason why we said keep it manageable is so that, like you said, you can grow the farms and your farming ability. And so, like, by starting with that 100 homes, it should be the goal every 6 months. If you have a good plan and process and you're able to handle all of these activities, that you're growing those farm bases, in many different places. And I think that for me, that you should go into any farm with a 24-month minimum community or commitment and beyond. Like, it should be a forever thing as long as your business is practicing. And just like your database can be handed over to another agent and sold to them, you could sell your influence in a farm. Like, if you can show me that for the last 10 years you've been farming this neighborhood, I could take your place, start farming, doing the same thing, match that we did it together, add my photo to your card, and people would start associating me with that same process. I could literally be able to sell that farm in some cases, or the process I'm going through. But it would probably be my goal that marketing and all of this creates value for my business long term. And so all I really have to do is understand, here's the financial commitment that I've made. Here's where I need to plan for that in my business. When I get a sale in that community, I need to take out a chunk of that money and put it aside for this long-term payment of this farm. And it only take one sale would be worth probably $15,000. And so you literally could bank the money and guarantee your business one or two or three deals every single year in that farm, and then go out and start another farm and another farm and another farm. That's how you would get 20 or 30 deals a year from farming by itself.
Yeah, I think that's important when you're putting your farm plan together. Then it's about taking a budget or a percentage of each sale to put back into the marketing of it, because that's what's going to drive it, especially in the early stages before you build your name recognition, brand recognition, that kind of stuff, before you're known as the neighborhood economist, before somebody says, hey, do you know anybody that sells real estate, and you're the first name that comes to mind, you're going to have to put some money or a lot of time into it. And I would just say, we've thrown out a lot of ideas on this show, and it could seem a little bit overwhelming. It might even just feel like it's too much work. But in reality, I think you got to start somewhere. And the first thing I would say is start with identifying what you want to market to, right? And determine, is it an area of town that I'm going to get to, right? For me, I live up north. I'm not going to farm Henderson. It would be too much of a chore for me to get out there on a regular basis. So set yourself up for success when you select the farm. Then lay out your budget, right, and understand what you have, and then figure out what you can send consistently over that period of time and commit to it, and then start, and because that's the biggest key, is getting started, and then do that consistently and just kind of watch it grow. And I think that's why they call it a farm area, because when you plant your seeds in a real farm, you don't just have crop, right? They've got to water it, they've got to cultivate it, they got to work it, they got to work the land, and then eventually you start to see some results. And then after some results, then you start to get some crop out of it. And then they take a portion of that money to buy more seeds and everything else to be able to do it the next year.
I think the only thing that you have to understand from the very beginning is that half of what you do won't work. Half of the things that you try to do in your farm probably won't work at all. And you need to either learn from them or stop farming altogether. Like, if you're not going to pay attention to the lessons that you're paying for, that it's not going to work out in the end. And you've got to stay consistent, and you got to have faith that it's going to work out. Because I can't tell you how many times I've seen agents start up a farm. They get 2 or 3 months into it and say, I can't afford that anymore, or I can't do that anymore. You're setting yourself up for failure. And so, like, you've got to make it to the point where you've been doing it so long, it's second nature, right? And I think that a lot of these good ideas, these are just examples of things that you could be as creative as you want. You know me, when I do business planning, I sit in my office and I come up with every crazy, idiotic idea that I can think of, and I put it to the wall. And then I step back and I look at the wall and say, okay, what stuff can I really do? What stuff can I combine together? What stuff can I make an impact with? And then that's how I kind of formulate my plan. I think it should be the same way with your farm. I mean, all of these great ideas are great until you do them. And then you find out how hard they are. Make sure you're taking those lessons forward, and you're learning from it. Like, if you send out a card and you get absolutely no response, why didn't I get any response? Why don't I try something different? And if you try something different and you get a better response, why? Why did that work so well? Nothing said you couldn't ask the consumer what made them call you. Well, I got your card in the mail. Oh, okay. What about the card did you like? I could inquire as much as I want without being intrusive, and I could use that info to make my business better and to make my farming better. That's the whole point. Tom Ferry spent a fortune. He spent an absolute fortune on a mailing company to find out stats that if I send a card on Tuesday and Thursday, it's more likely to be open than any other day of the week. Like, how much money did he have to waste to find that out? But that's the point. If you're really investing in yourself and your business, make those lessons work.
Oh, that's awesome. I can't believe it. This hour's flown by. I mean, I feel like there's so much more we could talk about, but
And I'm tired after all that farming.
yeah, it's a long day in the field. You waited the whole show for a joke and you landed it. Good job. Any final thoughts?
No, I mean, with everything that we talk about, the whole point of this is to have a well-rounded, robust business that will sustain any economic changes, right? And I love the fact of calling this the market economist, because what an empowering statement to be able to get on video in my farm social media group and share with them an update on the economy, an update on the marketplace. I mean, it makes me feel good that I'm not saying, please list your home with me. I'm just talking about the marketplace and providing them with hope and value. And so I think that with this, build some consistency. And the best day to start farming?
Today.
Today.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's true. So my final thoughts be this: choose your farm smart, show up in your farm consistently, and lead with insight. And with that, we'll let you go today. Thanks for listening to the Signature Buzz. As always, remember, we're always affirming your success. Have a great day.